And I will call this Human Resources meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Carol Young,
Here.
Scott McClory,
Here.
Tim Sharota.
Here.
All
All right, who do you want to take it, Carol? Pick someone.
Discussion regarding creation of Human Resources Manager position. Do we have anybody to talk about?
We do. So we appreciate everybody coming today. I know we just had a meeting, I think a week or two ago. Last time we met, we were talking about what to do about the treasurer position, and your charge for us was to get that posted quickly, which we have since done. It's actually being advertised right now. At the last HR meeting, the other topic was about what to do about HR, and you sort of advised us to start searching around for options, part-time, full-time, et cetera. I reached out to a local company that does contracting, and when I say local, but they're sort of nationwide, but they service this area, but they don't do like an a la carte kind of HR services. So you do everything or nothing. So you can't just do, they'd have to do payroll, they'd have to do all HR. So that kind of nixed them out. I talked to Jill, our personnel attorney, and she was not particularly, she just said that, she says there are some independent HR contractors out, but they work primarily in the private sector. Public sector employment work is simply so nuanced and fraught with pitfalls that I would not see use of an independent contractor as desirable. She says that, of course, is my opinion. So she says it seemed that you'd want to at least hire a part-time HR person so you have management control of the individual. So in terms of contracting with a third party outside the city, it's not looking like that would be super feasible. And then since that time, obviously things sort of changed because we had Sarah Larson, our deputy clerk, submit her resignation, which will be effective next June 8th. So now it's kind of putting us in a situation where now what do we do? Because obviously, we now don't have a deputy clerk. And so in terms of, let's say what the clerk is doing now with elections and HR, it's going to mean she doesn't have any support now for the foreseeable future. So with that being the case, we thought we'd reconvene and talk more about it to see what direction the council wants to go, and whether you'd be interested in hiring a full-time HR manager, let's say, and having that person help take over the HR side of it. And then we could decide what to do about the deputy clerk position later. Certainly we can evaluate how things are going, whether, we've talked about internally, let's say Stephanie, for example, could she help out providing backup for, deputy clerk duties with elections and, licensing. So that's one option. But, most immediate is what do we do about HR to get things rolling? You'll see that I put on in front of you, should see a little chart, because that's really been the biggest question is, well, how do we pay for an HR manager? And so there's several columns there, but the first column you'll see under the impact of reallocated wages. At the last HR meeting, I mentioned that, Corey and I recently were looking at how the wages in just the front office and as well as some of the other admin finance staff like me and Corey were being allocated, and we were surprised that some of the departments, we were surprised that some of the allocations didn't really I don't say make a lot of sense, it's not the right word, but they weren't necessarily sort of probably the most accurate. I mean, some of them were being split, like water, electric were being split evenly for some of the people up front, which electric revenues are almost 70% of versus 70% of the revenues come from electric. So it didn't really quite make sense that you'd be splitting those evenly between water and electric, for example. And then like fire, EMS weren't being charged at all for some of like payroll, and which again, or they were being charged a very, very small percentage, not reflective of now the fact that 20 of our 80 full-time employees are, fire and EMS. So when we reallocated those, it then, made the changes that you were talking, that you see right there. And there was a reduction in general fund by $30,000. Fire would go up by 23, electric would go up by 75, sewer would go up by 27, and water would go down by 115. And then EMS would go up by 23. So that's kind of the impact of what those changes would make. And then just to the column next to that, you see impact of loss of the deputy clerk. We budgeted $20,842 this year for the deputy clerk position, and it's 100% general fund. So that's all just coming from the general fund. And then on the right column, you'll see the impact of hiring a full-time HR manager, and at the midpoint of pay grade 16. So, and this is more so for just, I guess I would say argument's sake, in terms of where exactly you'd hire the person is obviously unknown at this point. But if we wanted to shoot high and think, okay, probably the most we do is midpoint of 16, well then this shows you what the breakdown would be based upon this, the step structure amount. And you can kind of see that when you add up all the columns, the net impact to the general fund, well, one caveat I should say is on that right column you see under net. That would be the impact of the reallocation of the wages, the savings from the deputy clerk position not being filled, and then the cost of hiring a full-time HR manager. And I guess the one caveat I'd say is that the general fund you see would have a net savings of $21,000. But because we split the fire fund is split 55% city and 45% to the jurisdictions, that actually comes out to be $21,600 that the general fund would have to pick up by the extra amount that the fire is paying. So the net amount then is the general fund would basically be a wash in terms of the cost for hiring a full-time HR manager. And then you can see that the cost for the other departments and other funds. So that's kind of where we're at with the HR manager situation. Just in terms of, let's say, in terms of where the pay grade was, looking at where, I did a bunch of, looked at a lot of research of other cities that have HR managers. So most cities have three types of HR personnel. You either have an HR director, you have an HR manager, or you have an HR benefits specialist. Those are typically the three different tiers. I don't think at this point we necessarily were looking for an HR director. Not to say in the future we wouldn't, but I think at least for the time being, HR manager. When you look at other cities that are comparable size or are larger than us, whether it's Delavan, Oshkosh, Whitewater, Green Bay, Middleton, Oak Creek, cities of varying sizes, they all have HR managers. So I think that's probably, certainly fair for us, to have in terms of we could get by with that. And when you look at how they fit on their, for their pay grades relative to other positions, they really typically are, if you look at our, this is where I'm going to attempt to. There we are. All right. Oh, it's going to be kind of hard for you to see.
He's zooming in for me. He was. And now it's close.
All right, that's probably about the best I can do. Typically, you see the HR managers somewhere between 15, 16. That's generally where they're at. They're going to be in one of those two categories. One instance in Delavan, I'm sorry, no, they're generally all 15 and 16 relative to your clerk and some of the other some of the other positions. So that's why we, if you see on the chart there, when you look at the HR manager pay relative to the city clerk pay, in Delavan, the city clerk is one step above the HR manager. In Oshkosh, Whitewater, Green Bay, Middleton, and Oak Creek, the HR manager is above the city clerk by at least one step. So that's where we came up with the pay grade of 16 as just a budgeting and a proposal. So that's where we got the 16, or say I got the 16. And then with that, about last week, Lacey and I started working on the HR manager job description, just to give you guys something to look at for today. Lacey talked to, her colleagues at she went to a conference last, Thursday?
Thursday morning.
Yeah, Thursday. So that's what you see in front of you is a best first effort to try and put together something for an HR manager position. So at that point, I guess I will temporarily stop and see what questions or comments you have so far of what's been said.
Well, I for one think hiring a full-time HR person is the way to go. So I'm encouraged that you're saying if we at this time don't hire a new deputy clerk, it's pretty much a push on the general fund.
Yes, correct.
Doesn't have
Yeah.
any impact on the general fund. Do you see hiring that deputy clerk down the road?
I think that's going to be a tough call. I know, Lacey would certainly advocate for it. I guess I wouldn't take a position as much as I would just say, we're having a lot of transition. If we hire a full-time HR person, we are increasing personnel by another half-time person, right? I mean, we talked the last meeting about, the suggestion was, well, maybe you could convert the deputy clerk into a full-time position and they could take on the HR duties. That's effectively what is sort of happening in a way by hiring a full-time HR person rather than, let's say, a part-time HR person. I mean, we're gaining that extra half person. So in the long term, is that going to work? It's hard to say. I mean, it's really hard to say right now because we're going to be having a new treasurer who's going to have new capabilities, new talents, and what can they bring to the table? What's the new HR manager going to be able to do? Are they going to be busy, 50% of the time, 70% of the time, 100% of the time? I think it's a little hard to know at this point. So I can't confidently say what's exactly going to happen and the demands are. And I don't want to say to you, like, we absolutely have to, because I just don't know where we're going to be. So I definitely know we need somebody to be backup. Yeah. And we've certainly talked about providing that backup. And like I said, maybe having Stephanie provide, some of the city clerk backup, and maybe the HR person can take, a small portion of it to help.
So you're suggesting, and it sounds doable to me, that we would wait and see about this deputy clerk position, see how it all shakes out, new treasurer, new HR person, see what the workloads are 6 months from now or something, and make a determination.
I don't necessarily want to make a suggestion either way, as much as just to say, I can't say to you, like, I'm confident we need this position the way it is now, just because I don't know how things are going to pan out. So,
Why couldn't we do an HR person and at least a 20-hour-a-week deputy clerk position at the same time?
You can, we would not have the savings from we'd have to find $20,000 to the general fund somewhere else. So.
The paperwork that's in front of me, there's something here that's a job description questionnaire that's updated July of 2019. It's a city clerk HR coordinator. This is
That
done
was
by-
the job description updated as of 2019.
right.
And we're now
For your
picking
job?
that apart. Yes,
That's
Your job.
right.
right. Okay. So, and I asked this last time, and maybe I didn't phrase it correctly or eloquently enough. If we take HR coordinator, benefits person, personal leave act, all that other crap, no offense to anybody, if we take that off your plate, can you still work without a deputy clerk? Or are you going to be going from 100 hours a week to 90 hours a week and you're still going to be buried? Because that's not, I don't want to set you up for failure. If we don't give you a deputy clerk, even if it's just 10 hours a week, is that going to, I don't want to wait 6 months until you tell me that you're back to being buried. And I saw how you were in the meeting, and as well as you try to hide your emotions, we know that you're overwhelmed big time. And the last thing I want is for anyone at this table to say, we should have saw this coming and now Lacey's going to quit on us because she can't take it anymore. So I'm in favor of keeping that deputy clerk, even if it's just for 10 hours or 20 or whatever Lacey says she needs. We can always ramp it up toward, and make adjustments on the fly, but to take it away off the table, unless you tell me you don't need them, as long as there's an HR person.
I can't say I don't need it.
Okay, so you're personally saying you're in favor of keeping some deputy clerk.
Yes,
Okay.
I would love to. I don't
You
know
need
how.
it. It's not a luxury. It's not a want. It's an absolute need.
The way I see it, yes.
Okay. So even if it's 10 hours a week, like
I
you
don't
said,
think we
maybe
would
somebody
find
who,
someone that,
20 hours a week, I don't know. I don't know. So that's my first question. My second question is, this statement with the research that you did, thank you for this very much. Did you get a sense of what exactly they manage? Are they the only person in Middleton that does anything with HR, or are they in charge of a true department and they have 3 underlings underneath them, or what? Because this person that we're going to hire is going to be an island of one, right?
yes.
So are they really going to manage people or manage whatever? Should they be called something different? I don't want to mislead people when they apply for the HR manager and it says you have no supervisory, responsibilities and you basically do everything HR.
Well, we looked at lots of different job descriptions.
Okay.
And we kind of weeded out directors just off the table. And then the other ones are more specific to different things in the HR department, but manager was what we could figure best because they are managing the HR for the entire city. So they are working with all of the department heads and all of the employees in each department. So no, they are not the manager of them,
Right.
but yes.
So go ahead.
So Carol, can I speak?
Go ahead.
So have you guys looked at human resource journalist or senior journalist or something like that, that would be more focused on those types of things versus a manager, which is a people person? When you have manager, you have people person, people responsibility.
I think that most of the generalists we saw, most of the cities that have generalists have a manager. So they usually have.
Above them.
Above them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say consistently, if there was a generalist, there was a manager or a director above them. Yeah.
Something that we've looked at doing it by me, I know it's private, but we looked at doing a senior human resource journalist that would encompass more of those things type scenario. And this is an opportunity where you can pick and choose what you want and develop the role into what the city needs. We don't have to figure out, okay, I wear a size 4 and I can only get a size 6. I'm wearing a size 6. No, we can customize it to what we need.
Yeah, I mean, what we put together is really just a start of.
Sure.
Yeah.
We took what was in the city clerk HR coordinator one,
Right.
tried to break it down to what makes sense to me. And then I shared it with the HR team that I met with last week. And managers seem to be the consensus. There are so many titles, it's kind of crazy.
Of course.
And then not making it too specific in the fact that it's definitely going to be more broad once they get here. And so,
Well, the
And we could
activities,
go back and-
the activities, it's how you define it. Not saying it's like, okay, it's this, and this, and that's it. But
right.
when people hear manager, they're thinking, look, I'm in charge of people. And you're not. You're just not.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I agree with you. It may be an argument of semantics, but if someone is a department head, a director, a manager, a coordinator, it's not just you.
Right.
So the title needs to reflect that.
Yeah.
And the pay, to be brutally honest, needs to reflect that, in my opinion. I mean, if, like, maybe I'm misreading this, but like your JDQ says city clerk HR coordinator and you're at level 15.
It's never been considered HR coordinator. It's only said it on paper. But yes,
Right, but if we pull out the HR stuff from you and you go back to, I hate to say, just being a city clerk, why would we want to have someone who's doing the HR thing, whatever title it has, at level 16 when they've never been at the city? And they haven't worked for the city and they're gonna be, I assume, just answering to you. I don't know, who do they report to? Have you guys even dug that deep?
yes.
Yeah. No, they
Okay.
yep.
So why would we want to put them at a level that's beyond what like you or some other people are maybe doing?
I mean, we could leave it HR coordinator and then find. the right
Again, I'm
step
back to you.
and
I don't want anyone to coordinate themselves. And that's why they get more money.
Here's the thing, like, I understand from like a theoretical perspective, I understand why it may not make sense, but I'm just saying if last year, obviously we we already had the pay grades last year, but
Yeah.
if you want to do this, when I say the right way, I mean, if you want to look at how, if we want to bring on an HR manager director, generalist, whoever that person is, and make sure that they're at the right pay grade, then, you know, what we were doing is looking at, okay, what are other cities doing? Where are they putting these people? What pay grades? So if the consistent, as you can see from, you know, the other cities relative, whether Whitewater, Oshkosh, et cetera, they're consistently putting an HR manager above their city clerk by about one step, or one pay grade, I should say. So if you want to, you know, put that position on the step structure and the pay grade where, you know, the market's saying they should go, that's where they should go. Now, if you want to do something completely different, you know, it's perfectly fine. I want to give you the data and say, look, this is what the other cities are doing, where they're falling, and, you know, like, look, does it make sense, or do I agree that, yeah, it's unfortunate that, you know, let's say if Lacey's been doing a good chunk of the HR stuff and this new person's going to be getting a, you know, pay grade higher, does that make sense? For, like, was that fair in the past? No, I mean, but that's not. I'm just trying to tell you, like, going forward, where, you know, where's the data, where's the market saying these positions be placed? If you want to hire somebody less at a generalist position, yeah, generalists, generally speaking, are 2 to 3, you know, 2 to 3 pay grades below the clerk. Question is, are you going to be able to get somebody, and is the expectations from that person really going to be a generalist job? Because I think most generalists are just providing general support to somebody else. They're not necessarily taking full responsibility. And I think the expectation is this person's going to be doing, you know, they're going to be the lead. It's not going to be that they're going to be providing support to somebody else. I mean, that's just the way I understand it, but I could be certainly wrong. So.
Like I said, I'm only speaking for myself. If I'm just throwing out easy numbers to make sense for myself. If 20% of Lacey's job right now is the HR side, and that 20% gets pulled out and given to somebody else, I don't feel that that person should make more money than our city clerk. They shouldn't be making more than our clerk, who's been here for 5 years?
Only 3 as the
Oh,
clerk.
3, okay. So I said my piece. I struggle with that.
Because she's doing the HR function already.
Right.
And then we're gonna bring somebody else in. It's only gonna have to do HR.
And make more
not-
money.
And make more money.
Yeah, I'm not okay with that.
That's what you're trying to say.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
For whatever that's worth.
I don't have a big deal with putting it at like 15, just make them equal. Easy to do at this point.
I would be more in favor of that.
Adam comes back to us and says, we've got good applicants, but they want to be a 16.
And that's where I think, you know, we've all heard you get them on their way up or you get them on their way down to come into your organization. If they're more of an HR generalist or a human resources / benefits liaison or whatever title versus a manager or coordinator, we could get them on the way up for a lower pay rate. If they actually, you know, if you put out there as HR director, you know, HR coordinator, you know, nobody's going to apply for that at that 15, 16 rate, I would think, because they've already been in HR for 10 years and now they're finally ready to become the director or the coordinator or department head.
Just as an FYI, I mean, most HR directors are this, I mean, they're getting paid equivalent, if not higher, than the police chiefs and the public works directors in other
Sure.
cities. So I'm just giving you a heads up.
Right, and that would be fine if she had, or he had 6 people.
Oh, yeah,
that-
no, I'm just saying. I'm
No,
giving you
I
a
get it.
sense
They're a
too.
true
Yeah.
department head like
Yeah.
anybody else, if they're really running a department. I mean, all of the exposure and liability and I totally understand that.
But my point was to sort of support what you're saying, which is, no, we're not going to be able to hire an HR director at a pay grade 15.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. So,
I'm not opposed to what Scott was saying earlier about hiring a deputy clerk right away. I get right where you're coming from. My whole deal's, where's the 20,000 come from? You tell me that and I'm on board.
there is. Let Corey go to a magic 8 ball.
It's not in the budget at the moment. Will we find something? I mean, we've kind of
Yeah.
done what we could to get to this point.
And that's why, like, we just can't tell you, honestly. Like, we can tell you where we can get the money for an HR, you know, manager or whatever the title is.
HR person.
HR person.
Right.
But where you're gonna get the money for it, I just don't know. And, like, you know, budget season will be obviously starting up here very, very soon. So, I mean, we're talking 2 to 3 months at the most.
So
So,
can we mull that over while these changes are being made and then see where we are a month from now? You know, if something,
Well, every day that goes by, we're not paying for a deputy clerk once Sarah leaves, and right now, we're not paying for a treasurer. So I mean, even if it's just a few $100s or $1,000 a week, it's something towards these other 2 positions being filled, right?
well, we'd be relying on, we'd be relying on the deputy clerk salary or wages for the full year. So we're counting that into, how we're going to pay for this position. The treasurer, the fact that it's vacant, we're not actually saving money because we paid that employee out, a lot of, PTO,
Sure.
all sorts of
Okay.
other stuff.
So
So
there's not much savings there, if any. Okay.
not for a while. We'd have to look at where the breaking point is, I guess you could say, but so.
I have another question. When we're talking about the treasurer job, it's talking about stuff that Stephanie would be taking off her plate and putting on the treasurer plate. How much are we talking about percentage-wise of her duties are leaving hers and going to the treasurer? 5%, 10%, 50%, 75? Do I hear 80?
We're thinking 20% approximately. Is that a fair estimate? Plus or minus 5%? 15 to 25, I think that's probably.
So with that, one of the comments that was made about possibly allocating some of the deputy clerk responsibilities to Stephanie. And with what Sarah was doing, does that equal out that 15 to 25% window and give the day-to-day support that Lacey needs from a backup role? But then, because she's always here, and Phil, keep your plate full without overflowing.
Just to the cup.
Just
the top of the cup.
edge,
Yeah.
to the edge. Have we considered that in more detail?
We've talked about it. My main concern is election time, because working in the state voting system, which Stephanie has knowledge in because she has worked in it, elections start 6 weeks before an election. And once we have in-person absentee voting, once ballots are available and we're mailing them, that takes up a huge chunk of time every day. If she's responsible for 75% of other duties that she has to take care of on a daily basis, I don't see it working out for those periods of time throughout the year, especially also on election days. If it happens to be a payroll week where the payroll clerk is out, that would be fun for Stephanie.
Well, you don't let that
And all
person
kinds
take
of
off.
No vacation.
You can say no this time of year, no.
Unless they have COVID, then you can't.
Can I speak? What if we just did that till the end of the year? All right, and then in next year's budget, put in for that part-time and look for somebody to fill it then.
I would not be opposed to that, but just so you're all aware, election time starts in November
Yep.
for next year. So it's before the end of this year, and with posting a job and interviewing and doing all that stuff, it's gonna take months. So,
Well, that's up to Stephanie too. I mean, that's, she's liable to tell us no.
well, that's the other thing.
I don't know.
is
Yeah,
I
I'm
know,
serious that,
we have a lot going on and a lot is changing. And like I had stated before, we can't really pick and choose what we want to do, because if we did, open records would be non-existent. But they're not. They are very real, and they come in almost every day. And so Stephanie came in as the office manager, mainly a finance position. And so we're just going to dump the other stuff on her when she did leave a job that she had more of those duties, to get more into the finance side of it. So, yeah.
well, yeah, I guess you could say dump, but if we planned it so that we knew that the first of the year, that basically, are you just going to help us to that point? And then it could go back in the direction that she wants to go in, if it's more into finance or whatever.
Well, and just for clarification, I mean, Stephanie's indicated, and Stephanie, you can certainly speak for yourself, but partly her prior concern had to do with meeting attendance at the prior jurisdiction, because they were meeting how many times a week?
Like weekly, we'd have 2 meetings probably.
Yeah, so it was more of an
Well,
evening meeting schedule issue so much as a duties issue. And I will say, it was one thing I do appreciate about Stephanie is that she's can do pretty much anything quickly, figure it out. I mean, she's had to just figure out a lot on her own. So I'm confident she could do whatever it is that the city, needed. So.
Did we have any luck exploring some version of a temp agency? Did we have any luck with that, or is it just too expensive, or
Temp agency for which job?
like any of it? Like you said, if she spends 3 hours a day doing open record requests, could we find someone that, they're not going to get benefits or anything, but they, for 3 hours a day or 5 days, whatever, they just do open records requests, filling them. I know they'd have to be backgrounded and vetted, and I'm sure Captain Brandel would be happy to do that for us, no problem. Wearing my other hat, it was a much bigger agency, but I had 5 people on my staff. That's all they did was fill open records requests all day long, 40 hours a week. That's all they did. And they all had to be backgrounded, and they had various skill sets. Some of them are really good at it, and some of them, had their struggles, but they worked through it. I'm just saying, one of the people was a temp. And I don't remember how much we paid that person, but it was certainly a third of what the county was paying with benefits and everything. I don't know. Is there any little job, or I hate to say little job, is there any short-term 2-3 hours a day, 3 days a week, whatever, that we can farm out?
I think it's gonna be tough. Like I said, we looked into it from the personnel side, which is
Yeah.
why I tried reaching out.
Yeah.
Whether you could find some other true temp agency, I don't know.
There's probably too much exposure because of
That's what
the
I'm worried
risk,
about.
with being a government agency and everything. If the wrong person saw, you didn't get this from me, they hand it to you. I get all that, but that could happen anywhere. Anyway, I'm just trying to come up with help become part, help be part of the solution, not part of the problem. That's all.
Oh, you're always part of the problem. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
I do throw out a lot of ideas. I'm not good at coming up with the solutions. I'm just good at what about this? What about that? That's my venue.
So just kind of build on what everybody's been talking about is short-term do this, but we could start posting in September. And by the time someone's hired and everything else, say it takes 2 months, they get hired, they come on the end of November. We should have something available with the current gaps that we have, as long as Corey's aware of it. She can kind of keep some money pushed aside. Don't spend this, Gary. Keep this
Or you
aside.
tell us when that person can be hired.
Right.
You sit down with Adam and whoever and do the math and go, we can't afford to hire this person until whatever, September 24th is their first day. And that's enough money to get us through the year. We don't, and then we do something else in January.
I think the toughest thing for us is right now is not so much this year, because we know that, okay, yes, the PD is under budget this year. Generally speaking, I know we just transferred some money to help pay for the vehicle, but I mean, the PD is generally speaking under budget. We know that, okay, we have some increased revenues that we weren't anticipating, honestly, due to investment income for one thing. So, I mean, we've got some funding that could potentially pay for, let's say, could cover the $20,000 at this point. Yeah, let's say could cover the $20,000 for the rest of this year. The question is more so we're worried about next year. We just don't know what next year's budget is going to look like. For one thing, we don't know what the net new construction is going to be. We don't know what the levy limit increase is going to be. We don't know what, wages, how that's going to, roll out. And the biggest thing too is health insurance.
But isn't that always an unknown right up until the budget? I mean, every year we're in the same boat. Like, how's it look? And right up, I mean, don't we have these same what ifs every time at this point in the year?
It does, but I'd say the downside being that, obviously inflation costs are going up, so it's making it tough. The health insurance is a huge issue for us. We just got, within the last week or two, our consociate has been giving us some red flags that our claims are just sky high again this year. So that could potentially be a real big challenge for us next year financially. So that's why it's like, we don't know that we can really guarantee that next year's budget is going to have a lot of flexibility in it. We could tell you, yeah, we could probably cover it through the rest of this year, but we just don't know what next year's going to be like. So that's kind of a problem.
Isn't the state aid, I don't know if it was COVID money or whatever, but in Madison, aren't they talking about dumping a lot of money to municipalities? But then it just got taken off the table, I think, last week. And so that's kind of.
Talking about the ARPA funds? Or whatever they're called, SARPA?
ARPA was the name of that,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you talking about the new state budget? It's not COVID related, but it's about what they're.
But where'd the ARPA money come from?
It's
Plus, there was a big surplus.
reallocating to the local. You're going up there too.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that they've already passed, at least the House already passed the supplemental aid. So yeah, we are potentially looking at $250,000 more in aid next year, which, yeah, is, I mean, obviously is a good amount of money. On the flip side, when you calculate just what a 3% or 2% wage increase is going to be, you know, it I'm factored in with health insurance and everything else. I mean, it may not, just saying it may not be sufficient to like give us a bunch of extra leeway. So, and I guess my big thing is I just don't want to, you know, neither Corey nor I want to say to you, hey, we're absolutely confident next year's budget will be fine, we'll figure it out. And then come September, October, November, you're like, hey, we come back to you and say, we got to cut $100,000. And you're like, well, why did you not tell us that? Or why did we then go on? That's just what we just want to be transparent that we don't want to make any promises until we start seeing the numbers.
I don't feel like we've accomplished anything today.
Well, why don't we look at the agenda? So where are we at with a human resources manager position? Do you want us to,
I guess I'd make a motion to advertise and hire a HR person at a pay grade 15.
And with some other title besides manager, coordinator, department head, whatever.
Yeah. And
Like I said, I think if we're gonna mislead people and they're gonna think, oh, I'm getting this, you know, this big title, and you're gonna come in, you're gonna find out you're in charge of nobody except yourself. You're not managing anything. You're not
doing.
You're a doer. You're not a manager. You're not a department head and you're not a coordinator.
You're doing.
I don't know what that magic title would be. I'm sure somebody smarter than me can figure it out.
HR position.
Is liaison too fluffy a word?
Yeah.
Well, then you pick one.
I threw one out there.
I don't know what they're not a general, like, I mean, they're in charge of all of our HR, but they're not in charge of anybody. So what do you call
HR
that?
princess.
Huh?
HR princess.
or Prince?
Yeah, that would be really widely accepted to have an HR prince or princess.
You researched it. They just call it a manager then, don't they? I mean, is that
Again, the positions you see, director, manager, and special.
those three titles?
Director, manager, and then the benefits specialist. Those are the three categories of positions.
Generalist wasn't, I mean, there's
Yeah,
actually a lot.
HR/benefits, what was the last one you said?
Specialist.
Specialist. HR,
Grade goes up with that, I think.
specialist,
So,
because they're only gonna do HR stuff, right?
Yeah, but
so the Lake Geneva one was the HR benefits specialist.
Mhm.
And can we look into, or did you look into what are all those duties? And does that fit what we need?
I'd have to look at it again. I looked at so many.
Because I would say that as an HR benefits specialist, you know, kind of covers.
I like that, I
HR,
like that, yeah,
But
I like
see
that.
what the details are and see how they mesh to what we're trying to accomplish.
And if you need to add to it, and if you need to shave it off, because we don't do that, and they won't do this, and they won't do that. Yeah. I'd be more comfortable with that, so I'll second Tim's motion.
thank you.
Carol, you want to get a vote going here?
Yeah, all in favor. Say aye.
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 And I'll make a motion to continue with some version of deputy city clerk. Exact hours to be determined after, I guess, Adam or Corey tell me or tell us. You know, we can have them for 15 hours or 30 hours or whatever, but we got to keep that position open and not vacant, because I think if we leave it vacant, we're all gonna go, well, we've gone 6 months without it. We'll just continue to go 6 months. We've all seen that.
And then when Lacey walks out, then we go, oh,
Now we need a full-time clerk, and I'm not having that.
Is your motion to hire that person right away?
Unless somebody tells me financially we can't afford to do it, yeah.
I think they already did say that.
We already said that? I thought Corey said, we'll see, I gotta do some checking or whatever.
Again, the question is, can we cover it this year based upon the current wages that we have? And let's say some savings in certain departments? Yes, we can, probably,
At 20 hours?
yes.
Okay.
But can we guarantee that next year's budget would, you're not gonna be really looking for that 20,000 or the 21, 22,000 that you need next year? No, we can't guarantee that. That's the issue.
And that's kind of scary,
it's
because
kinda
then you
bad.
bring someone in and then
Yeah,
Well,
you're only
Yeah.
there for,
yeah,
yeah.
with full transparency, none of us are advocating that we get this person hired and then in January tell them there's no money for them, they're fired or laid off, whatever. That's not gonna happen. At least that's not what I'm saying.
it's not the
Listen.
intent.
That's not the intent. I mean, we have we have millions of dollars in budget money. If we can't figure out a way to find 20 or 30 grand to keep a city clerk, we've done it this long. Of course, we didn't have the HR specialist, but still.
So does your motion include finding the money and taking the time to make sure we've got that all figured out?
Well, he just said we have the money for this year at 20 hours a week, yes?
That's good enough.
Hire somebody
That's good
for
enough for your motion. I just,
7 months, that's.
Like I said, I'm not planning, I'm not, like I said, I can't imagine that we could not have figure out a way to keep this person on it and without fringe benefits or anything at 20 hours a week at, what is it, 13, 18, what is it? I forgot how much they were getting per hour. 18. So,
Can you say your motion again?
sure, I'm gonna make it easier. I'm gonna make a motion to immediately, thank you, immediately post the job opening for deputy city clerk at the current rate, hourly rate, and weekly rate of 20 hours a week.
In current job description.
What's that?
In current job description.
Well, that's a given.
I can't vote.
You can second it.
here.
You don't want to second it?
And there was one thing I did strike out because this deputy clerk won't be handling any HR. I'm going to give it the HR person. Should I leave it in or take it out?
I don't, hang on a second. What are you?
It's a different page. See, the really small one, this one.
Oh, I can read that.
I know.
Assist with the scheduling and tracking of employee training activities. We're gonna no longer ask them to do that.
If we have an HR person, we will.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
But I need a second for my motion.
I think I'm gonna say no for now, only because I'm worried that we would get somebody in there and then not have enough money to cover for next year.
So the 20 hours a week that the city clerk is currently giving us will no longer be there. So the people that are buried are going to be even more buried for the rest of the year because there will not be that 20 hours of relief and whatever form that relief happens to fall under.
You, Lacey,
They still don't have a
would that
treasurer.
help you to have that?
Yeah, she said it would.
But Em, didn't you say you were gonna shift some things around? I mean, when the new HR person comes on, maybe Stephanie gets some time too, right?
We
So-
can do that, yes.
So
Yeah.
it's not like we're gonna lay everything back on Lacey again. It's gonna, some of that's gonna shift. But a lot of it'll shift right when if you hire a human resources man, not manager, Ken, a human resources person.
The specialist. And the treasurer.
Yeah, and the treasurer.
The treasurer's gonna take stuff
Treasurer,
off
you know,
Stephanie's plate.
I mean, I'm not saying you don't need it, Lacey, but if we can get by and, start looking at next year.
It's an absolute need. Because what if I can't be at a meeting or can't be at an
Oh.
election?
Who's going to be your backup without it? I'm asking.
It's not about everyone else having backup. It's kind of important for me to have a backup. So if we can establish that in the office, fine,
Okay.
but I can't have it be a maybe. It can't.
So
Okay, well, I'm gonna change mine and make a motion for you to have
you
your.
mean second my motion?
I'll second yours, yeah,
Okay.
because I don't want you being stuck.
I don't want her to quit.
I don't either.
And if we keep piling on, we're gonna end up with a new treasurer, new HR whatever, a new clerk, a new deputy clerk.
5 new aldermen. I
Okay,
can't speak for Dunwoody. All right, so Madam Clerk, you have a motion on the floor.
all those in favor say
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
So that'll go to full council. I guess we'll see what the vote is in Monday.
What those troublemakers are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the end, right? I will second. I'll
Okay,
second.
all those in favor say
One more
aye.
question. So before council, you guys gonna come back with a